Well, greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Karl, and welcome to another episode of Karl's Spirits. Tonight, we're going to be tasting Clyde Mays Straight Bourbon. That's Clyde Mays Straight Bourbon. So, as you know, if you're a longtime subscriber of my channel, and I hope you are, and if not, please subscribe and click like below. That helps me out. If you know that in most of my episodes, okay, all of them, I have really tried to provide the story that goes with the bottle and the pour. I really love the history of bourbon, almost, but not quite as much as I enjoy bourbon itself. And we've looked how some of bourbon's biggest bottles have some of the greatest stories, but at its heart is actually false. Some barely have any story at all, and then there are those that have a great story that is true, and the bourbon actually tastes good. What's it going to be tonight with Clyde Mays Straight Bourbon Whiskey? So, here's the story. Clyde May, he's a real guy. Born in 1922 to a single mother in Alabama. Like most, he suffered through the lean years of the Great Depression. Joined the Army in World War II, served in the South Pacific, where he earned a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Thank you for your service, Mr. May. Following the war in 1946 is where we really pick up with May distilling. He begins to distill his own moonshine on his family's homestead around, and I'm going to say this wrong, so I apologize up front, Conachew Ridge. This is an area very close to his hometown, just outside of Montgomery. And this was all in an effort to provide financially for his wife and his growing family that will eventually reach 8 children. So in Alabama, though, in 1946, it was illegal to distill moonshine. And so this made Clyde a moonshiner and a bootlegger, and a wanted man. This is going to go all the way up till 1973, when Clyde is arrested for moonshining. He's going to serve 8 months in a federal penitentiary, and upon his release, it is said he went back to making moonshine almost on the same day. So, Clyde May, he sold his whiskey as an unaged corn liquor, basically moonshine, and it is going to be barreled briefly with dried green apples. And it was said that he could produce up to about 300 gallons a week, and he did so for several decades. Clyde is going to die in 1990, producing illegally up to the very end. His son Kenneth picks up where he left off and begins to look around for a way to do it legally. He goes into Kentucky, where he contracts with the Kentucky Bourbon Distillers, which we know from previous episodes is actually Willett Distilling. Takes his father's recipe, goes to Willett or Kentucky Bourbon Distillers, and it has been produced as Clyde Mays since 2002, or somewhere close to that. And I don't mean 2002, I mean Clyde Mays. It goes under a variety of different names. In 2004, Conachew Ridge, Alabama Fine Whiskey was designated as the official state spirit of Alabama by the Alabama legislature, making it one of the few states who have a state drink that isn't alcohol. That same year, later on that year, Kenny May, that's Clyde's son, is charged with several violations of Alabama liquor laws. He pleads guilty and fined heavily. And as you can imagine, for about a year and a half, you could not find Clyde Mays on the shelf. Distilling production had stopped, and you could not find it. In fact, the legislature even tried to reverse making this its state spirit, but that never went anywhere. So to this day, this is Alabama's state spirit. Finally, after a year and a half, production resumes, brand ownership changes, and it's rebranded. And finally, everything's going along smoothly for Clyde Mays. In 2014, it changes again. It's purchased by an investment group out of New York State named Conichu Ridge Distilling. So they formed a company and named it in honor of it, and then purchased the brand from the acquisition group. Currently, and this has been said now since about 2017, Conichu Spirits have been planning to establish a distillery in Troy, Alabama. So it's just outside of where Clyde grew up, but that's been delayed, as I said, numerous times. They still have not produced their own distillery and their own product. So that's the story. It's kind of cool. And from what I can research pretty quickly, it's mostly true. But it remains a sourced whiskey with a company that plans vaguely in the future sometime to begin to distill their own product. So where does this actually come from? That's a really great question. It's kind of a mystery. On the bottle, it will tell you that this one is distilled in Kentucky. So this Clyde Mays Straight Bourbon distilled in Kentucky. It is then shipped to Auburndale, Florida for bottling. Okay. But you go pick up another bottle of this on the shelf and you will find that it says distilled in Indiana and shipped to Auburndale, Florida for bottling. Probably MGP. Where's this from? From Kentucky? Maybe it's still from Willett. Maybe it's not. Who can tell? It's a really cool story. But as we all know, what's actually in the glass? That's what really matters. So let's pour what's left of this bottle. I was gifted this bottle by a friend. And it's not quite the whole pour, but it's close enough. And we're going to try Clyde Mays here. The mash bill on this, 78% corn, 12% rye, 10% malted barley. Supposedly, this is about 5 years old. It is non-chill filtered, and it has been bottled at a very easy to drink 92 proof. So first of all, in the glass, it's actually a very light amber. And I will tell you, there are almost no legs to speak of. What are there? They run very, very quickly down into the liquid. It's very thin looking in the glass, at least to me. It's a very light amber and very light legs. Now, that in itself is not a problem. What about smell and taste? So first of all, I think it's very earthy on the smell. I get a lot of dark molasses here, but there is a backer of what I'm going to call dark fruit. By that, blueberry, blackberry, somewhere in that family. Probably closer to the blackberry than the blueberry. Taste. So for a 92 proof, this has a lot of alcohol burn, at least for me. It actually starts very, very smooth with a hint of what I'm going to call toasted brown sugar. Absolutely. Right there on the very front of the tongue. Very sweet, but it quickly blooms into a full-on cinnamon bomb. Lots of cinnamon toward the end. And there's another spice that I really can't identify. Been trying to do that this evening. The closest I can come is that it has a clove or a wintergreen flavoring here. It's not the most pleasant of tastes, but luckily it dissipates very rapidly off the back of your tongue. The finish continues with that alcohol. You can really feel it lingering far more than you can the flavors. In fact, I think the finish is actually pretty dry. It leaves my mouth in a dry, finished feeling. But I don't think that's unusual. There's been other bourbons that have done that, but it's usually not in my profile. The only flavor I'm really picking up here, again, is a more earthy tone, and I'm going to call it peanut. And that's really about the only finish I can pick up aside from the alcohol of Clyde Mays Straight Bourbon. So what's my takeaway ultimately? Well, guys, here we have a really great story, and I do think it's a great story. Clyde Mays, self-made man, bootlegger, arrested, kept distilling. His son revived the idea in his honor. Son did some questionable things, maybe not, who knows? He did plead guilty, so let's go with that. They're trying to really play homage here to Clyde Mays. I think they rely on the story, though, to sell the bourbon. It's a much better story than it is a pour of bourbon. And to me, it's like they're trying to sell the story. In fact, this bottle is beautiful. It's kind of old-timey look, Clyde, and that's a picture of Clyde right here. I know you probably can't see him. Kind of a orangish pink ghost-looking figure there. It's got some pictures of him here on the side during his bootlegging days. It's a very old-timey look. It's cool. But it's really what's in the glass that counts. I've said that repeatedly, right? It's not a terrible bourbon, but it's not that good either. This is very much a meh bottle for me. And I've harped on this in previous episodes, as some of you know. Be honest. Be transparent. Tell us what's in your bottle. Now, they did give us a mash bill. I'm appreciative of that. I like to know the mash bill. That's great. But some of these bottles of the very same thing are labeled Indiana. Some are labeled Kentucky. Who knows? You get what you get, as I said earlier. Transparency would be great here. What's wrong with telling us where it's from, why you're sourcing it out? So I like to know what I'm drinking. Now, how am I going to rate this? Like I said, this is a meh bottle. I'm not that enthused with it. It has some okay flavors, but not enough to warrant a really high rating. On the same token, it's not terrible enough for me to downgrade it too low. So where am I going to go? .25 stars. That's 2.25 Karl stars. It's my opinion. Other people's may differ, and that's okay. I want everyone to remember, regardless of your feelings about Clyde Mays or any other bourbon I've reviewed, I want you to stay safe, peace, and happy pours.